Welcome back to Pre-Algebra Chapter 8, Section 5 in this book. We've been talking about graphing lines. We learned about how to do it. We learned how to do it the cheater pants way. We learned about slope. Now there are different ways you can write lines. Like you can have x and y on one side of the equation, or you can have just y by itself on one side of the equation. These different ways of writing the equation have different names, and the way where y is all by itself is called Slope-Intercept Form. It's also called y equals mx plus b. It's also called function form. So one thing that makes math confusing is the English. This has so many different things we can call it, but I like to call it my favorite form. The reason why it's my favorite is because if you look at this graphing calculator, it has a button that says YX. It's Y all by itself. And I don't know if you can see this or not. Let's see if I can get to do it. Oops, nope. But it will graph my lines for me on my calculator in this form. So that's why I like it. So also known as favorite form. Alright, so when you have an equation written like this with y by itself, and then x, and then the bare number, then the number that goes with the x is the slope. And remember we said m is slope and we don't know why? The y-intercept is the bare number, and maybe b is for bare number. That would make sense, right? And I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so here's an equation, y by itself. The slope is the number that goes with x, but it doesn't have a number. Oh yes it does. It has what? An understood 1. If there's not a 0 there, and there's a letter, then we know that there is a 1, but we don't write it because we're the cool kids, and the cool kids don't bother writing the 1. So what is the y-intercept? It's the bare number, and it's -4. Now notice how I changed that to a capital B. By tradition, it's a lowercase b. But I'm dyslexic, and numbers and letters, they flip, they don't stay where they're supposed to. And very easily, that is a 6 in my brain, or an upside down 9. So I know upside down 9 is same 9, you know. So for me, a lot of times I'll just change it to capital B because capital B is more unique in my brain, and it works better for me. All right, so here's one. That one was easy to identify because y was already by itself. But this one, it's not. So if you're going to find these out, we have to get y by itself. And how we get y by itself is by doing the opposite. And we start with what's further away from y and work what's closer. And what's further away from y is 3x. It's why y is not alone on its side of the equals. And so I'm going to do the opposite. This is a plus 3x, so I'm going to minus 3x from both sides. And I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to bring down what I didn't mess with, the 5y and the equals. But by tradition, you put x's before bare numbers. So I switched it and put the -3x here and then the plus 10. Now why is y not alone? Well, it's being multiplied by 5. So what's the opposite? Divide by 5. Who gets divided by 5? Everybody, because it's a pirate party. So you get to divide by 5 and you get to divide by 5. These cancel out. This becomes -3/5 x, and then 10 divided by 5 is 2. So now, what is the slope? It's equal to this, what's with the x, -3/5. And what is the bare number? The y-intercept, it's 2. Now, why is this your favorite thing besides your calculator will graph it for you? It is actually really easy to graph it all by yourself. So what you do, here's an equation and we're going to graph it. You go to the y-intercept, the bare number, and see what it is. It's 4. So I go on the y-axis, and at 4 I put a dot. Then you go look at the slope. And remember, slope is rise over run, or it is up over kind of thing. Well, so this is actually up and down. Over. Rise over run is the slope. So this is telling me my up and down part is negative, so I go down 2. 1, 2. My over part is 3, so I'm going to go down 2, And now I'm going to go over 3. 1, 2, 3, and I put another dot. If you've got 2 dots, you can draw your line. Doodle-doo. Okay, now let's do that one. I made the black line red, so let's make the red line green. Okay, let's try this one. So you go to, on the y-axis, you go to the y-intercept, put a dot, and it's at 1. Now this one, what's the slope? It's negative. If there's a negative, put the negative in the numerator. So this is the same thing as negative 1 over 1. It's an understood negative 1, but I'm going to put it negative 1 over 1 because there's an understood 1 in the denominator. So I'm going to go down 1 over 1, put another dot, and these aren't really parallel even though they kind of look like it. Then eventually meet up there, I think. Anyway, so there's my other line. So I go down 1 over 1, put a dot. It would have a dot there, 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 there. Yeah, that's kind of right. There. Yeah, I think they're going to run into each other up there somewhere. Okay, now, parallel lines, if you don't know what that is, watch the video I just made for geometry. Parallel lines have the same slope. So let's graph these. I go to 1 and put a dot. I go up 2 over 3, put another dot, and here's the black line. Whoop. More fun with sound effects. Now let's do the red line. I start at negative 2 and put a dot, go up 2 over 3, put a dot, draw the line. They're parallel. And if I had done it on graph paper, you can see it better. They'll never meet. Perpendicular lines, the ones that make the perfect plus, the slopes on them, you flip it and change the sign. Now where the flip it clap comes from is turn up the radio, blast the stereo louder. The real words say pump it, but we say flip it, flip it. Okay, so if we were in class and I said, what do you do for perpendicular lines with the slope? And you look at me blankly, I'd go, and you go, flip it. And I'd say yes, and change the sign. So that's why I have these little cues, is to help kids when they get stuck. But it also helps put it in your long-term memory. All right, so here I have 2 lines. I have this one, y equals 3x plus 2. And a perpendicular line, you flip the slope and change the sign. So now 2 goes to the numerator, 3 goes to the denominator. And it was positive, so it's negative. So if we graphed them, they would make that perfect plus. And I did it on my calculator, and that's what I'm actually showing you. See? Perpendicular lines. Those 2 lines graphed for you. All right, so do your homework, take a look at it, come back, and we'll talk more about lines. Math is great.